So hello again, I am back with a video response to Lou Valcourt. I love her and her hair's like a rainbow. She's so awesome and she's into heavy metal, so what's not to love about her? Anyway, she did a top 5 nostalgia decks, and this kind of hit home with me because I do have decks that, I own strictly for the nostalgia, what it means to me, and it kind of takes me back. I don't even work with some of these. They are just strictly for collection purposes. Sorry, I have my fan on and it's blowing my hair around and it's making my nose itch. So, my top 5 decks. And the criteria she did was, these are decks that kind of take you back to your younger days, or they're reminiscent, or, you know, maybe your first few decks when you first started, you know, whatever. But my first one, my first 3, is based on the art. This is art that I grew up with as a kid, and the first one is the Faerie Oracle. It's the artwork of Brian Froud, and the text is Jessica Macbeth. Again, I do not work with this deck at all. I just strictly have it for the sake of having it, and it's still in the box. This is the cardstock. It's pretty crappy cardstock, actually. Here's the backs of the cards. There is a blank card, which is your fairy guide, whatever you feel your fairy guide is. These are the cards. These are just, this isn't so much the work that I'm interested in. We'll go through, let's go find some really nice fairies. Oh, here we go. This is the artwork I'm talking about. Trying not to bend my cards. They are that flimsy. Bare butt, sorry. I grew up with the fairy book that Brian Froud did. So did my brother. We both have, you know, this is something we grew up with. It's part of our childhood. He also bought the Trolls book and the Good Fairy, Bad Fairy book by Brian Froud. My brother is a big fan of the Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. And I used to just love looking at the fairy book and wanting to find those flowers, because I wanted to find the fairies that lived with them. And yeah, weird child, yes, I want to go find fairies. And, you know, I do have this respect for, you know, fairies and fae folk based on what I've read in Brian Froud's books and what I've seen. I know they're not just cutesy and sweet, far from it. So, yeah, that's my idea of fairies. The other deck, and again, this is strictly for my collection, it's an artist. I grew up, my dad's a big fan of this artist, so I grew up around his work all the time, and that is the Dali Tarot. Yeah, again, this is really kind of shit cardstock. Yeah, it is what it is. This is a reprint. This isn't the original one. What's interesting is this was originally done by, oh, wait a minute, let me see something. Okay, okay. I thought I didn't have a full card. They're actually still in order because, like I said, I don't work with them. I got this strictly as my collection because I am a huge Salvador Dali fan. I grew up with his work. My dad's art was influenced by his work. And this is what I grew up with. You know, this is what I always saw. And I love it. Let's see. Love me a death card. That's interesting. Yeah. So, Salvador Dali's work, it's been part of my childhood. Same with Brian Froud's work. So, these were decks I got just because of the artist and the artwork. And that's what takes me back there. So, and then the third one, which is one I actually do work with, is the Tarot Mucha. I probably mispronounce it. I don't care. These are the people that did the deck. Figure out the camera. I'll butcher every single one of those names, so I'm not even going to try. This is one of those decks. Sorry, smoker. It is so beautiful that I almost can't read with it. I will just stare at the cards. I can't help myself. Oh, here's the backs. While this is all recreations of, or basically done in the style of Mucha, there are images that I know I recognize from pieces that I've seen, like the back itself. That is one of Mucha's pieces. I have a calendar somewhere. My dad used to take the calendars that we'd get back in the 70s, and he would make like this one. I think that's one of Mucha's works. Or that's a reproduction of one of his works. And he would make plaques on wood with the images from the calendar. And so my brother and I, we picked out, we went and got like 3 or 4 different calendars, and we're gonna try and do that. Basically, you just place it on wood that's already stained and routered, and then you varnish it on. My dad did we used to get the Hildebrandt brothers. Those are other artists that take me back to my childhood. Unfortunately, I've never seen a Hildebrandt, Brothers Hildebrandt deck, but yeah, we would take that, and we had one that was the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, and my dad made a table, and he put this fold out that was the I think it was the party at Bilbo's Hobbit hole, and yeah, it was weird. That's my childhood. Now this is a deck that I got, and my nephew is silly. He's 4 now. He was 3 when I got this deck. We had been through a lot, and my niece is adopted, and it was kind of a struggle to get her all placed here. It's a long story. She is better off with us. My brother and my sister-in-law were the ones that adopted her, and so for a couple years we were going through a lot, and it was just really emotional and really difficult. And it was September of last year, and we were coming to the close of it. The adoption was finalized in November, and emotionally I was just done with all of it, and I wanted something that would make me smile at Halloween time. So of course, what did I get? The Halloween Tarot. It's by Kipling West. I can't remember names. Probably going through menopause and losing my mind. Okay. Those are the backs. I got the tin version, and they are so cute. I was showing them to my nephew, who was 3.5 at the time, and he had a big grin on his face, and he would look at each card and go, "That scared me." He'd be all, "That scared me." that scares me. Now they did, wands are the imps, and I think air is bats. There's a black kitty. I love that. Oh, here's bats. 2 bats. Black kitty. Ghosts are cups, and pumpkins are, what is it? Pentacles. There we go. There's a ghost. There's the page. Look. Wednesday Addams. There we go. But yeah, this is just so cute and so Halloween-y. It's one of those decks that you work with it, and it gives you good reading. So, I mean, it's Rider-Waite-Smith based. But it just makes you smile. It just lightens the mood. And when you're in a place where you just can't face a deep, dark deck, like say, I don't know, Night Sun Tarot, which I do have, used it for shadow work. Yeah, sometimes I don't need to see that shit, so I need a cute deck. So those are 4. My final one, and I had this in my last video, and that is my first deck. And again, not a good first deck. And that is, here's the companion book that I bought. The Tarot of the Witches by Fergus Hall. It's a pip deck. All the meanings were based on the Rider-Waite-Smith, but it makes you wonder. You don't know where they're coming up with these things. I wanted to find the High Priestess card. That's her. She's on the cover of the box. She has a little mouse. I think that's adorable. You know, there's no rhyme, no reason. This is a deck where you really do have to already know the meanings of the cards to work with. But quite honestly, I do really like the art. It's silly. It's quirky. It was my first deck. I could never get rid of it. I never will get rid of it. I don't really read with it. It has made me look at, what is it, the Tarot of Sweet Twilight. I've really thought about getting that one because it reminds me a little bit of the quirkiness of this deck. Just the strange art. Again, big bodies, small heads. I don't understand, but this was my first deck, and no matter what, even when I kind of went away from my path and everything, I didn't get rid of my tarot decks. I had 2. The other was the Quick and Easy Tarot. That was my second deck, but I kept this deck. I even made a pouch and everything for it. My Witch's Tarot. So this just takes me back to those days. So, kind of just, I don't know. It's just weird. But then again, that's just kind of how I am. So I hope you liked my selection. I don't know, you know, some of these decks, yeah, I admit I will never work with. I'm totally cool with that. They're strictly for the collection. Do you have decks that you just collect for the sake of collecting, that just have sentimental value or whatever? You know, you can always leave me a comment. I'd like to read them. Until next time, much love and blessings.